Welcome to the Liberated Life. Get ready to free your mind, body, and spirit in business and pleasure. Now here's your host, Robin Quinn Keehn.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of The Liberated Life. I am really excited to be back. I know I've been on a little bit of a hiatus here and there, lots of things going on in my world that have kind of slowed me down and stopped me from being super productive in the podcast situation. So welcome back. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Today, I'm really excited to be talking to Vicki Nethling. She is a friend of mine. I've known Vicki for a year or two through a Speak Mastermind with Suzanne Evans. That's where we met. So we are both very interested in speaking and in leadership. And we're going to be talking today about public speaking and some of the things that make it scary and some things we can do to overcome some of the fear that goes along with that. Vicki and I were just chatting about neither of us are very afraid of it. We actually really love it, but that is not necessarily common. She also has an anti-aging wellness business, which complements public speaking really well. And I'm very interested in that, Vicki, because I know as a woman who is in a new decade here, I just entered a new decade. It's almost a year ago already, but you know, as we age and we think about our confidence, even if we're confident in speaking, there is a little something going on for me anyway about, well, how do I look? Because I'm not, I'm not 40 anymore. I'm not even 50 anymore. And so that does play a little mind game somewhere in there, like, oh, Robin, you're getting older. And that does kind of hit your confidence a little bit, Vicki. So I know you are also helping women in particular. Maybe you're helping men too with their confidence in how they look on stage and how they present themselves. So I'm really looking forward to talking with you. So welcome to the Liberated Life.
Thank you so much, Robin. I'm excited to be on. It was such a joy to have you as my guest on my podcast. And so I'm glad to be able to return the favor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. So Vicki, how did you get started in this arena? And I know leadership is an important part of this. So how did you get started doing what you do, helping people with confidence in leadership and public speaking?
It's really a great journey that I have taken. And I was not, and I am an introvert. So I was not one of those people that sought out to do public speaking. I sometimes think, though, that my being the second of oldest of 7 kids maybe taught me that you sometimes have to speak up if you want to get heard in the crowd. So I was, I was working almost 15 years, and I was introduced to a great speaker who happened to be the CIO of the company that I work for. And he had such a way of speaking that it wasn't as if I was being taught at, but it felt like I was just always part of the conversation. And you just were so impacted and intrigued by what this man said and how he said it, that you wanted to listen on. And so from that point on, I began my journey to become a better speaker. What I found, the tie into leadership was just right there, because when you're a leader, you have to coach, you have to counsel, you have to inspire and motivate. And all that is really done in how you say it. Mm-hmm. The words could be said in several different ways and have several different reactions. We all know that. And you see that even in the written correspondence. So becoming a better speaker makes you a better writer, a better teacher, a better inspirer, mentor, coach. And so I, in 2021, decided, rather than just doing this on a volunteer basis, I should seek out and try to help as many people as I can, because I, as you said, am in my 65th year now, and I want to make sure that I continue to try to make an impact with as many people as I can, from the youth all the way to the adults, the entrepreneurs. And to do that, they have to find their voice. And that's important to me.
I love how you framed that, because being one of 7 children, you cannot be silent. Well, you could, but you probably would not get your needs met. So just learning how to speak up, because we need to ask for what we need, right? So that's really important. The other thing I was thinking about too is the idea that everything is based on communication. It's all based on communication. Every relationship, it's based on what we are saying. And if people cannot understand what we're saying, we don't say it in a compelling way or an engaged way, our relationships suffer. So whether it's leadership in our families, leadership with our children, leadership in our primary relationships, or in our jobs, it's all about communication.
If you think about it, a lot of the problems that we have in our lives, in our jobs, in, our churches, everywhere, often stem from a lack of clear, concise communication. Either we don't communicate at all, or when what we say is said in a tone or a way that is misconstrued, misunderstood. What you say has to be, I think, driven by your gut. And to not say anything sometimes is an appropriate thing, because it gives you time to listen to the other person. And I really truly believe that a good speaker, good trainer, a good coach is a person that actively listens to what is said, so that they're not talking what's on their agenda, but they're responding to what is said to them. And that makes it a more fruitful conversation. And a conversation is what can move you from blockade to actually starting to make some progress.
Absolutely. And just being able to listen and reflect back and ask great questions. I just had a conversation with one of my clients right before you and I hopped on the call, and she was telling me about a conversation she had just had this morning with her son, who's in high school senior, and he was late to class. And I loved the way she responded to him. He said, I was a minute late and I was locked out of the classroom. And she said, well, is that something you expected? Instead of judging him, or, she left it open for him to come back. And he said, well, actually I did, because my teacher made it clear you couldn't come in when the bell had rung. That was too late. And I just thought, wow, such a great way of asking rather than, and looking forward to hearing a reaction and a response rather than, what were you thinking? You're going to get locked out, right? So just that ability to listen and respond is so important in communication, and not the judgment, but like you said. Oh, okay. So Vicki, tell me about on stage. You mentioned this, that you were very inspired by the way that you felt included in a conversation, or included and curious when someone was speaking on stage, and this was somebody that you respected. Tell me, how do we create that when we are, let's just say we're speaking to an audience of some sort? How do you create that engagement?
The old adage, know your audience. As a speaker, you really, especially in person, you need to get there early enough to kind of walk around, get to know people, see what they're, ask those questions that will open up some of the doors. So then you can see, is the talk that I'm giving the right one? Do I need to adjust? Do I need to put more emphasis on certain areas? And if it's online, it's the same thing. I try to always, in my meetings, have a 10 or 15 minutes where I'm online before, so that anybody that's new that arrives early, I can sit and chat with them as well. That networking piece is really, truly important. If you don't have the ability or the gift of having that extra time, then that's when you need to make sure that when you tell your stories, when you really present the information that you're going to share, you do it in a way that makes the person that's listening to you see themselves. They can say, oh yeah, I feel that. Oh my gosh, I heard that. I understand that. I have been there. When that's now about them and not about you, then you reach them. So for that CIO that I talked about, whenever he was talking about and telling his stories, which he was a superior storyteller, but when he was talking about that, I could see not only what he was saying, but I was just mesmerized by the way that his voice captivated me, that it really was a magnetism that made me want to hang on every word that he said.
Mm.
And then that gave me the inspiration to try to do that myself, especially when I work with the youth.
Oh, that makes total sense. That reminds me, way back in the day, I taught kinder music. And this was like back in 1993 when we first moved to this little town called Squim. And the teacher that my kids had was just very musical, and she didn't talk a lot. She was very calm. And so when she did talk rather than sing, we all paid attention because she was captivating. And then I went to this big training because she asked me to take over, and went to this big training in Seattle with probably 60 early childhood music educators. And I watched all their different styles, and I knew I could be anybody in that.
Yeah.
I could adapt. And I chose to be like Karen. She was just captivating with the way she presented and was very quiet and calm. There is that draw in, that captivation, that way of being that's not like anybody else.
Yeah.
So finding what your way of being is that captivates people and isn't just like everybody else. So let me ask you about that. You know, when it comes to speaking, well, actually I have two questions for you, but one is, I've noticed that there are a lot of excellent speaking coaches out there, but I sometimes feel like they all want me to be just like them. Like if you were just like me, then you would have this huge audience and you'd be able to do all this stuff. And yet I don't want to be like anybody else. So how do we take these really like the standards of speaking, but make them our own, so that we are really truly ourselves on stage instead of just like a carbon copy of somebody else? Because I know these really great speakers on stage, it would be great to be just like them, but I'm not them.
I think that your individuality is what makes you special and captivating. And there are basics that all speakers that are great use.
Right.
And it is their personal stories. It is what they bring to the table that makes them unique and exciting. The fact that, you know, you and I both speak, but we both have different styles of speaking. And there are people that are out there that, you know, come in at level 10 and they go the whole way to level 10 the whole time. And people love that.
Mhm.
And for me, that turns me off. So it's really understanding that not every person in that audience is going to connect with you. But the ones that do, it is the uniqueness that you bring that they're connecting to. And so that is what you should keep on doing. It's, you know, you aren't, for me, I'm not trying to get every person to follow behind me. I just want the people that are most impacted with what I'm saying, that can take what I advise or suggest and make it theirs, make it that it works for them. I remember there's a bunch of language. If anybody has tried to study a foreign language, you know, there's a lot of different programs out there. And I remember whenever I was going to have to speak in Italy, and I was speaking in English, but I was going to be in Italy for a week. And I thought I should know something about Italian. You know, I should know some words to say.
Right.
And so I got this program that I listened to. And the unique thing was that they had this music, classical music, playing in the background of the instruction.
Mhm.
And because of that, I had to listen more intently. But what that taught me was that I don't always have to scream to get myself heard or understood. That if what I'm saying with my facial expression, with my gesturing, can attract somebody to listen in, to wait for that thing that's going to be impactful, then I don't have to scream it at them.
Right.
But it is that roller coaster ride for my style that makes it different, because there are times when I will go way up there and I will go, you know, I will just joke around. That roller coaster ride is what keeps that person interested, because now they're not knowing what to expect next that's going to come out of my mouth. So I think that's what makes us individual.
Yeah, I really like that because, it is like, I think there are a lot of people that aspire to be like a certain speaker, Les Brown. I know I was in a program where he was present and we got coaching from Les and it was pretty amazing. But I heard people like, he's my hero. I really, I want to be just like him. I'm like, but you're not. And so to try to make yourself like somebody else it's just very difficult, I think, and we can never live up to that. So if we could just live up to our best, and like you said, with our stories and our facial expression and our gestures, and I love the analogy of the roller coaster too, right? Last May, I took my grandson who is 8 and his mom and stepdad, we went to Disneyland, and my favorite ride there ends up being California Screamin'. What now it's the Incredibles, whatever, but it's that huge roller coaster that does the loops and it's really something, right? And it's all in the anticipation of the build and the climb and the loop, and then you're back down, but then there's the anticipation of that big corner, is coming up and you're like, oh my God, hold on. And that is what makes it fun. It wouldn't be fun if it was just straight thrills. It's the pauses in between that let you take a moment to absorb and like anticipate the next part. So I love that. I have another question going back to something you said earlier, Vicki, around showing up in a meeting room. So to just visit with people. Now, if I'm live and in person, I love to wander around a room and talk to people before things start. And, I'm not even really very strategic. I wasn't really thinking like, figure out what they're thinking and be able to adjust my talk. But I understand that makes sense. But I find the online environment more awkward when it comes to that because you've got a bunch of people potentially coming into your Zoom room or into some room, and they're coming in, piece by piece. You're letting them in and they're coming in and you're trying to have a conversation. I'm wondering if you have any suggestions for that, because I always feel like I'm having a conversation, but I'm halfway through it. And then somebody comes in and now I feel like I need to go backwards and include them. But do you know what I mean? I think it's really awkward. So do you have any suggestions on how to be smooth and inclusive and asking questions while there's so much happening before a meeting? Just curious.
So I always like to ask them to start putting stuff in chat about, where they're coming in from, what brought them to this, because the chat is saved. Now, those that come later are going to miss some of those early pieces, but again, it's setting behavior on my part. If Vicki does this stuff before her session start, so I'm going to make sure I get there early. Or if you want to, just have your session start 10 minutes after the start time, the official start time, you could do that way. But I like that warm up time. And I think the more things that you can do in chat to get them going, and make it interactive in that first part. I don't try to repeat anything that I said. If you missed it, you missed it. And we're going on to the next thing, because my whole goal is to just try to make those that are online active at that time to feel part of it. And as I said, if you do it enough times, people get the clue that they're going to come early for the fun. And if they don't want that, if they want to get right into the meat of things, then they'll just join at the very last minute.
I love that. That's very helpful. I have a live event every summer. Well, now it's online and virtual, which is great because more people can participate from around the world. It's for Simply Music piano teachers. And that's always the dilemma, right? I like to start it a little bit early and just see who's coming in and chat with them. They're usually somewhere around 50 people for a couple of days. And I am committed to starting on time. So I let people know I'm starting on time, but I like the idea of just creating some space for visiting ahead of time and then being a little more strategic and asking questions to have them put in the chat. That's a great idea. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. And I hope if you're listening and you have any events like this, maybe find out, like, are they opening up the room early? Is anything going to be happening? Am I just supposed to show up on time? But if you're there too, and you're there as a participant, to engage in the chat, because it does help the people who are speaking know a little bit more about why you're there, or what you're up to, or where you're from, or what questions you might have. That can really help those of us that are talking to have a little more context and find out what you're more, what you're interested in, or what your questions really are. That's really great. So, Vicki, we have time for just like one more question, but one of the things you had said to me is something about having your speech, for those of you who are speaking, be like a song without singing a note. Can you say a little bit more about that? Being a musician, that was intriguing to me.
Yeah, I often will advise people to listen to music on the radio to understand vocal variety. And even radio announcers, they don't have the luxury of you seeing their facial expressions or their gesturing or their body movement. They have to capture you and hold your attention the entire time. And in a song, the song has the hooks. It has that intro that gets you captured. And then it has that lyric that, is bringing you on. It has the moments where it's soft, and it has the moments where it's loud. It has the moments where it's fast and slow. All of that is how, when you speak, you need to understand that it just can't be one note. One note is boring. One note will not keep me. One note might get me there, but it's not going to hold me. So I have to take you through that song by the various different notes that you have. So that means I need to speed it up. And you know what songs get us going. Those are the ones that have faster beats and things like that. But we also have to have that rest.
Right.
And so again, to me, when you speak, it's like a song where you're not singing a note, but every word that you say is like the melody, like the introduction. It's like that strong conclusion that makes us remember those words.
I love that. That is such a great analogy. And you're right. There are times in songs, where we've got the intro, we've got the verse, we've got the chorus, we might have the bridge. So these are all different parts that keep us intrigued and waiting for the next part. I love that. I also love the vocal variety and thinking about people like on this podcast. We are not having a video. We are, but Vicki and I are looking at each other, but you're just hearing the audio. So if I'm speaking in a monotone the whole time and I never get excited and I never pause, then and I notice, Vicki, as we're speaking, you have a little pause. And then you pick up again, which makes me lean in and say, what's she going to say next? So really great points there. I love that so much. So Vicki, how do people find you? I know you have a podcast. I'd love for you to talk about that. Where can people connect with you if they want to hear more?
The best way is to go to my website, which is findyourleadershipconfidence.com. My podcast is there. It's also on YouTube under my name, Vicki Nettling. You can find me on social media. Victoria Ann Nettling is my personal page. I also have a Vicki Nettling page. I have a confidence page. I'm on Instagram as V Nettling, and also on Pinterest, as well as LinkedIn as Victoria Nettling. So you can find me on all social media by just searching my name. But the best, as I said, way is to go to my podcast website, and that's Find Your Leadership Confidence Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I will put all of that in the show notes. So if you're looking for Vicki, you will find her somewhere. She is everywhere, as you just heard. So not difficult. Thank you so much, Vicki, for being here with me today and chatting about this. The name of the show is The Liberated Life, Set Yourself Free in Business and Pleasure. And really, that's what we're talking about, is feeling confident, knowing that we can captivate and connect with people as we're speaking and sharing things that we think are important and that people have come to hear us talk about, and just feeling good about doing it, capturing people and helping them. And I know you're all about helping us with our confidence, and the things that you shared were really meaningful today. So thank you, Vicki, for being here with me.
Thank you for having me as a guest. It's been just a pleasure. Hopefully we'll do this again.
That sounds great. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. You can find all of the information about connecting with Vicki in the show notes, as I mentioned, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Liberated Life.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcast. You can also get more great information at quittingculture.com.